Hey guys, we're here in Italy with John Festa and our host, Gianluca Frazan, and you're in for a treat to try to understand his English.
It'll be fun.
It'll be funny.
Fun.
Yeah. So, we just finished 5 days of teaching, and the bulk of it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the World Kyusho Summit. So, what we're going to do here in this piece is talk about things that we saw during the seminar, some extra finer points that we didn't have a chance to go into because of time constraints and everything else. And so in this particular one, we're going to talk about fine-tuning some things and stopping your opponent from countering some of these techniques. So those two pieces sort of go together. Okay, so do you want to start with one of the ones that we're talking about?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So, one of the techniques that we did during the seminar was off of here, scoop the legs out and work into an arm bar. Well, if I'm going to go and attack my opponent's legs, as I'm moving in, there's a good chance that he's going to take that crowding and step away, which makes it hard for me to get that knee. So, we want to, when we transition from here to here, we want to make the window of opportunity for him to escape as small as we can. So, what I talked about during the seminar was control the wrist, pull the wrist that way until I got this knee. Now I'm free to go to this knee and scoop the legs out from under him.
Anything else to add to that, or?
No, I'm just using that as a lead-in for the idea of how to stop your opponent from countering.
Okay. Well, show it. Show it.
We ready to take the form?
You don't have to do the whole fall. You can if you want, but go into.
Okay. So I'm going to move in without the wrist, and you're going to step away to counter.
That's good.
Yeah. Step away counter, and where would you go from here? I would step, go for a headlock. That's the point. I just got counter. So now I'm going to do it with. I didn't mean for him to go down, but the best throw is the one that you can't stop him from going down.
So the whole point is you have to flow into it. You have to be able to move, not just escape and stand there and go, "Haha, I've escaped." That's not going to work that well. You have to finish the technique and get in, even if it means shoving the person into a ditch as you go this way. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you're going to complete. And give him one of these, right? Ooh. Okay, so that's one example of a technique. Now go into the arm bar. There's one of the techniques that we're teaching at this past weekend. And do the counter that we were talking about before. Pulling the arm.
Well, he has to do the counter.
Yeah.
Do what I'm going to do. So basically in slow motion, he's giving me forward momentum with his hand. I'm going to allow him to do that, and I'm going to accelerate it up and over the top. Now I have the arm bar. He can counter this by taking the hand that I'm pushing this way, yanking it, and I counter him, he counters me.
So now go back to the original arm bar. Stop right there. If he does that right and keeps on the bone against the triple warmer point, it's going to be, and he gets your shoulder to jump forward like that, it's going to be very hard to reach across to grab his wrist, which is the initial part of it is preventing him from countering in the first place. But what most people do, slide your arm up. More. Now it's easier, even though he got the shoulder starting to go forward and John's body goes sideways, it's a lot harder for him to complete the technique because he's compromised his own self by leaving his arm all the way out here. So that way you can grab it and take him off balance and finish the technique.
Yeah, whenever you're doing techniques, it's important to look for opportunities for your opponent to escape, both on the giving end and on the receiving end. Even if he goes here and he starts to apply the arm bar, if I, instead of fight it, allow myself to go with it, take the momentum that he's giving me, I can use that to my advantage.
So one of the things that we always talk about is the recognition of when to do what. I mean, the timing's everything, and it's not just the timing of recognizing the visual recognition of what's coming at you, but when you're, what day was this? Was it, when did we do the sensitivity drills? Was it Saturday?
Something.
Okay, so it was Saturday morning.
And Friday also.
Okay, so the sensitivity drills are feeling where the person is so that you can move, you know where to go next. They will tell you what they want you to do to them at that point, because you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also part of it. So when you see, do the move again, move this way, move it. So go to do the arm bar, Jonathan. If he waits too long, it's no good, okay? But if he feels it going, he can use the momentum that he's got as he's moving forward. He's now changed the angle on the actual arm bar, and Gianluca loses it. And then you can go into a whole host of other things.
So the way that Gianluca can tighten this up is, instead of throwing me just forward, immediately rotate to get me going towards the ground. Now it's very difficult for me to do anything.
Yeah, because what's happening, again, it's cutting off the pass, okay? His weight is over his feet, he can't even lift his feet up. You know, do you remember that old thing for Archie Bunker with lifting the chair?
No.
So you take a chair, you put it against the wall, you take 1, 2, 3 steps back, you lean your head against the wall, and you can pick up the chair, but you can't stand. And so there was a whole big to-do about this, because his wife could do it and he couldn't, but she also has smaller feet. And I think it had a lot to do with how big your feet were and how much you moved back. So as soon as you lean forward, you were on your toes. Now you're holding something that's a little bit heavy. You're standing here like this, and you can't get your head up off the wall because your balance is compromised. That's sort of what's happening to you. You're stuck like this. Do the technique again. Now stay there. Go push forward a little bit more. So you can see he's only a tiny bit. It's a good thing you took the exit. And he's only a tiny bit here. Do you know? So if he's holding me here, I can feel my toes gripping the floor. Okay, keep it here. Now, if I try to go back, if I try to go like this, I can't. I'm sort of stuck in this position. I can't rock forward, push. I'm going down anyway. So you're stuck there in that position. And again, looking at the balance, looking at where the person's going to be as you're doing it, and also feeling it. And look, realistically, we're not going to sit there and hold the person there. You know, do you give up? Do you give up? We're going to finish the technique, and then afterwards, while they're on the ground, and you lock them up, you know, you're going to see if they're going to give up at that point. But we're analyzing the movement so we can see where are we.
So when I'm on the receiving end of the technique, even when he turned it down here, before he's got full pressure, once he has full pressure, I'm on the balls of my feet. The weight is here. I can't go anywhere. If I can react quickly enough, my first is to stay on my feet and go this way. The second one is, as he's going down, if I can react quickly enough, you can turn in and counter your opponent that way. But once he's got weight on both of my feet, that option is gone. I can't do that anymore, because I can't lift this foot up in order to swing it across.
So the rule when you're doing the arm bar is to stay perpendicular to the arm. That's the pressure that we need. So it doesn't matter whether you're pushing up, forward, down, you keep that constant pressure, but at 90-degree angle to his arm. if you notice what John did, just by stepping in, he changed that. There's pressure, but it's not the same pressure that's debilitating or that's gonna throw you or block you from moving. You change the entire structure of the technique. Same thing, do the arm work. If he's here and I just drop my arm this way, he doesn't have the arm bar now. From here now, I can step in, I can go to hit, and then come back and counter that way as well, just by doing this. Just by sinking my arm just enough. Are there other things he can do? Sure. But I stopped him from doing the arm bar right away. Just into here. If he gets put pressure forward, he gets me to here, I'm done. Because he's not going to stop. But as I'm feeling, as he's putting pressure in, you see how his body changed also? His weight now is going forward. His toes are starting to grip the floor because he's off balance. This allows me now to take him this way and do the same thing. But if I'm doing here and he turns his arm, turn his arm. Oh, no, don't bend. Just go like this. Just not even that much. Yeah. And keep your arm straight. Keep your arm straight. Finito. And just rotate like this. Rotate the wrist. So that's it. Again, come back. So if I'm here, if I'm doing that, yeah. If you, now pull. If you do that, now we're going to fight. Okay, come back. Twist. That's it. Twist and put to my hip now. So another way to counter that is just to do here. We didn't do this on the weekend. But I just started thinking about it as you're doing it. All right, what else can we do from here? It's a good position from the offensive side. If you follow through with good technique, it's a great throw. However, what happens if someone's putting you in it? How can you counter it with as little motion as possible? All I was doing was this. And that changes everything. This starts to move just slightly. But if I do this, now I have to, he's still pushing this way. Now I'm fighting him where he's strong. He expects me to actually pull this way. I'm doing what he doesn't expect, which is just doing that.
Another avenue for escape. We've talked about over the weekend 45 degrees to the ground to make his heels float. Watch his hands. Fingers open up, arms move away from the body. If he's going for the arm bar, all I need to do is he's pulling me in this direction. Now I can use it against him. Point to the ground. I've just loosened his grip. He'll compensate for this and go right back into the arm bar. But I've got a small window of opportunity where he's not holding on, and it gives me an opportunity to move and escape. It's not an escape from the technique, it's a small window of opportunity, some breathing room to help you find other ways to get out of it.
Another thing you have to understand, we're doing this slowly. If you do it slowly, you deserve to get countered. It's just, you have to, boom, just do the technique, get it over with, move on. Okay, this is practice. This is analyzing the movements, because when you start doing things real time, you have to be able to not anticipate. It's almost like assuming, where you make an ass out of you and me. You can't assume, because that also leads to some mistakes. You have to, the word wouldn't be anticipate, I think the word would be recognize. And be able to see and feel, because you have concrete knowledge from him doing it in slow motion. You feel all the different parts of it. You can now slow all this down in your mind, and even though everything's happening full speed, to you it may be in slow motion. We've all had those things, like those near accident type of things. Everything seems to go in slow motion, and you all of a sudden recognize all your different options of where you can move the car. I had that guy, I was skidding, ended up skidding 120 feet. And I had the options that I had were, do I try to move in front of the car because the guy cut me off over here, going perpendicular to me? I could try to go in front of him, because I saw he hit the brakes, but there's oncoming traffic. I can go this way, hit a little tree, and the tree this size that killed my friend, or I can hit him. So I went straight into him, and I knocked his car over on the side. But I remember, as soon as the accident was over, it was though I had three options in front of me right away. And I had to make a decision fast, but everything seemed to be going in slow motion. It's one of those oh crap moments where it's just, you have to do something. And this is the same, you start to feel it, as soon as you recognize, oh, hey, he's doing this, change.
So the question is, how do you learn to recognize what your opponent is doing and react to it? Mark had mentioned before about speed of execution, and in a fight that's critical. But when you're trying to learn to apply the principles that we're covering, you need to give yourself time to think. So it's important when you're working with a partner that if he goes and nails it, I'm not going to learn anything. He's not going to learn anything because he's not going to see what I might do to escape. And I'm not going to learn anything because I haven't figured out how to escape. So a short pause, look for an opportunity to escape. He goes a little farther, look for an opportunity to escape. And every step of the way, by slowing yourself down and giving yourself time to think, over time and with repetition, you'll get faster at recognizing these opportunities, both on the giving end and on the receiving end.
You know what it's like? It's a checklist that you go through, that you're building a reference guide or a reference library in your head. It's a physical one. You're learning it through physical means, but you're categorizing or cataloging it mentally. That this goes with this goes with that, and all of a sudden, you start to. You don't think about it anymore. You do it, and afterwards you're like, oh, I found the association here. My body reacted to it. But that's also a way of training. You can learn that faster. Instead of just doing something repeatedly, it's being aware of what you're doing. As you do it repeatedly, you can install, I believe, you can install the whole thing faster in your brain so that your body will react. You know, why do some people learn faster than others? I think part of it is they're looking at it through a different lens. It's the same information, but one person, half the room is getting it quickly, the other half isn't. They're either going too fast, they're not paying attention to the little details where you want to do that. And maybe they're not used to cataloging it in their head. I mean, I've gotten my hands on thousands of people all over the world, and you've been training longer than me, and probably have gotten your hands on the same number of people, and you just, things start coming together. But I don't think it should take as long as it has in the past.
Well, it's going to happen at a different rate for everybody. I talk a lot about using reflexes against your opponent, but in the way that Mark and I teach, we also use reflexes in the learning process. Like I mentioned a minute ago about slow rolling. Give yourself time to think. Only through repetition will you get fast at it. Basically what you're doing is you're building up reflex reactions in yourself through repetition. So not only can you use reflex reactions that are built into the human body against your opponent, but you also use that same principle to help you learn and become very quick in terms of execution when it comes to a real street fight.
Okay. So, any of the techniques you want
Give you an opportunity to work with something.
to pick up on? Okay. So, one of the techniques that we were working on just yesterday was over here. So if he's grabbing, if I'm going to come in, this was where everything ends up in a wrist lock type of motion. So if I get the person here, this is wrist lock, but I'm putting him here, I would twist and put him down. If he's grabbing, I'm doing this, the same thing. So number one way to counter this is real simple, don't grab me. If he doesn't put his hands on me, there's no counter, he doesn't have to counter, it's just a verbal sparring match. Okay? So, but if I come into here and do this, he can now just step in at me because if I do this, I lock his foot to the floor, he's not bringing that foot up. But if he sees this happening, just step in towards me and push your elbow in. So now he's broken my balance and gotten me back. And he can just start to turn this and go to an arm bar himself, and then we're going back to what we just did before. Okay? I don't prefer to do an arm bar from like not underneath grip this way, but if that's all I got, I'm going to take it. So over here, I'm coming into triple warmer 3, and I have the lung points over here. I'm torquing the wrist, and I'm torquing down towards large intestine 4, okay, which affects his thumb, which puts him in this position. So another way, one is if he steps in. I can't do this now because now. So as I was saying, we had a technical difficulty. I forgot to plug the camera in. So I ran out of power, that's what we were talking.
He was counted by the battery.
That's right. Okay, so back over here, so he's grabbed this. I'm gonna lock in. His counter as I'm doing this is to step in towards me and shove me with the elbow. That puts me back on my heels. And then again, he has, a whole variety of things he can do to me. He can do the exact same thing to me and take me into wrist lock and take me down, etc. Another thing that he can do for me, or go to the side. If I'm doing this, is to just take his other hand and just push my elbow into me. That cuts me again. Look what happened. My body started to go back, my weight shifted. I can no longer put any pressure on here. Do it again. So I'm stuck here in this position. I don't have the leverage anymore because I'm back this way. I almost need to be over this because I need to get his elbow to come straight under his hand so I can drive down and then turn. So little things like that, taking the balance away immediately is what counts. You're going to say?
Yeah, correct. You start from where you were. Now, I want you to watch something. Start to apply the technique. Watch this shoulder. See his shoulder starts coming up? In order to apply the technique, take that hand, put it here, push your shoulder into his ear. He just gave you something. Take it, use it to your advantage.
So do it again. That one actually I felt the shoulder pop. I mean, it wasn't a good feeling. First one was just pressure up. Second one was when you pop it like that. And again, that makes the person think twice about, all right, should I counter this guy? Or am I going to let him do this to me? Or am I going to do this? You have to control the situation as quickly as possible. This puts him in the driver's seat. If I don't do my part right, if I do my part right, I'm in the driver's seat. And that's really the goal, is to look at you're analyzing every single technique that you do, which is why we teach principles. We teach techniques to understand the principles, but in reality, we're teaching the principles. But how else can we teach the principles if we don't have a technique to actually, as an example, then you're just talking about it. There's no, it's the mental understanding of what the principle is, but then there's the physical understanding of the whole thing. I guess it's like carnal knowledge.
Yeah. When you're doing this drill, you'll often find yourself out of ideas. So as long as you're doing it slow so no one gets hurt, I've come up with some really good techniques this way. You do something that this is never going to work, but you try it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it halfway works, but it gives you ideas that move you forward and come up with ideas that actually do work. One of the examples was I was doing this slow rolling with one of Mark's teenage black belts, Philip, and I managed to get a hold of the fingers. He knew what I was going for, so he countered me by tightening down. Rather than meet force with force, I paused for a second and said, what can I do from here? Oh, how about this? I covered his eyes, his fingers loosened up this much, and then he hit the ground. I'm like, oh, that worked pretty well. I ended up teaching it at the seminar this weekend.
One of the things that we also talked about is, I think this was yesterday, or I don't know if I said it out loud to the group or just to individuals, is you're usually only this far away from either the counter or fixing the mistake that you made. But people think they need to abandon ship and change the technique. That was one. The other thing is, we get bored. If you do the same thing over and over again, you get bored. So we think we have to teach a million different things. You don't. You can teach the same thing, but just look at it from this angle, look at it from this angle, look at it from this angle. Show how the counter can be done, how the counter can be done, how not to be countered. All these little things, but you're getting across the message of how to do the initial technique. You're just taking a different perspective of doing it. It's remember Mad Libs? So we had this thing called Mad Libs. Some of you may know this, and some not. So not everybody from the United States. It was a story that left out all the adjectives, the verbs, and the nouns. So we would you'd sit around and you would say to somebody, give me a pronoun. or give me a noun, you write it down. Give me an adjective, then you write that down. And then you read the story, and it was funny, we were kids. But the entire story changed when you changed the people, the places, and some of the things. But the body was the same. And it was, yet it kept us occupied for hours. We were just looking at the same thing. Well, you can do the same thing with the techniques to get better at it by looking at it from as many different, ways as possible. And you'll see where the counter is, where this is. Vince Lombardi was a football coach, was famous not for watching film forward, watching it backwards. And I think he was one of the first ones to actually do that in the pro ranks. It was done in the college ranks by the guy he learned from. They started looking at everything and seeing, oh look, there's a hole there. We can fix that. This guy didn't do this, he was this much off. We can fix that.
So, how do you get ideas if you're out of ideas? Here's one drill that you can do. The counter that you try to apply, try to use the same technique that your opponent is using on you. Give you an example. I'm going to come in for an outside leg sweep. He can counter this. Instead of resisting, take that outside foot, step back, 1/2 step. Now, twist your hips and face the thing behind you. So he just countered an outside leg sweep with the same technique. If I have the fingers, now normally when you go for the fingers, you don't have a death grip like this. If I'm holding his fingers, usually my thumb is open a little bit, or this finger is open just a little bit. Well, he can counter it with the same thing that I'm doing. There's a bunch of options that he has here. Before I get the grip, he can use his thumb and apply it to my pinky and get finger lock on me. He can use the other hand and get a compression finger lock on my thumb. Again, he's countering the same technique that I'm doing. He's using the same technique to counter it. So whatever technique you're doing, armbar, pull it over the top. Now he has the same armbar. Use the same technique. Good finish. Here, what I did, I just countered his kotegaesh with the exact same technique. So that's a very concrete way that you can build a drill. Restrict yourself to trying to use the same technique they're using on you, back at them.
Yeah, you want to play detective and look at it and say, okay, how can I use it back on them? What they just doing to me. And that's those are simple ways to not only practice the fundamentals of a technique, but you'll actually know it from both ends. Meaning, what it feels like to be on the receiving end and what I can do to counter it. But go back into the same thing. So we're going to wrap it up.
Sure.
With that, so this was, this one we were focusing on some things that we noticed from the training the past 5 days. And if you have any questions, please let us know. And thanks again. Ciao.